America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michelle, do you want to do your DASA presentation, please?
Sure.
Sorry.
Okay, one of the requirements for the state is that we review our code of conduct and that we update the code of conduct yearly. And there was a new law that went into effect this year, the Dignity for All Students Act. And one of the requirements is to go through the changes. So the intent is to produce or create school environments free of discrimination and harassment and these things. This law goes into effect July 1. So when the kids come back, we'll need to be fully up and running on DASA. They're trying to take away the term bullying because it's so overused and switching it back to what it was. And it's kind of interesting. I just found a paper going through all of the files, and as I moved, that refers to harassment. And harassment is truly the term that we should be using and not bullying. Harassment is the creation of a hostile environment by conduct or by verbal threats, intimidation, or abuse that has or would have the effect of unreasonably and substantially interfering with a student's educational performance, opportunities or benefits, or mental, emotional, or physical well-being. It also includes conduct, verbal threats, intimidation, or abuse that reasonably cause or would reasonably be expected to cause a student to fear for his or her physical safety. And that last blip was the point of emphasis that had to be the exact wording. Cause a student to fear for his or her physical safety. That's what takes it from being students interacting back and forth to a different level of harassment. Is that it's the pretty much the interpretation of the perception of the student who's being harassed. These are different types of harassment behaviors, and I think it's really important. And we've put this in the elementary handbook, the student or the high school handbook, and we're also putting it in the faculty handbook so that everyone understands the different types of harassing behavior that can go on. Physical, everybody is used to hitting, punching, tripping. That's all stuff that people understand, and it's not a problem when we deal with their children in that sense. Verbal, this is where we talk about the verbal is actually what people have started to refer to as bullying on a regular basis. The name calling, teasing, taunting, making offensive or discriminating remarks, verbally threatening and intimidating. This next one is not one that people hit on very often or think of very often. The social, emotional, relational behaviors, excluding kids, starting gossip, ostracizing or alienating them, using threatening looks or gestures. And everybody knows that I was having issues with, like the 8th grade girls 2 years ago. They became 9th graders, and we sat down, we had to talk about the look. Well, the girls understood the look, so that's a real thing. Extortion is another social emotional thing. And the last harassment behavior is cyberbullying. Use of the internet, cell phone, or other technology to harass and intimidate. And that one is becoming, well, it's not becoming, it has become probably the most severely abusive form of bullying that we have going on, or harassment going on, and the toughest one to deal with. On school property and school functions, the law prohibits student harassment by school employees or students to students. And in our code of conduct, we've also added students harassing staff is against the code of conduct as well. But the law only speaks to students and staff to students. But it is covered in our code of conduct. There it goes again, the cyberbullying. That's a huge piece of everything you look at. Cyberbullying is a real problem that they're trying, the law, the legislatures, the governor, the schools are all trying to get a handle on. Student discrimination, this is the DASA piece of it, specifically student discrimination by school employees or students based on a person's actual or perceived race, color, weight, national origin, ethnic group, religion, religious practice, disability, sexual orientation, gender, or sex. The three words that are read are there because those are new terms, new features added to this. The other things were all there in the past and already have federal laws against them, but the state now has added that. And really the intent here is that any student, it doesn't matter if they're short, tall, skinny, heavy, it's all students is what they're talking about. And even though it might not specifically say tall and short, it still covers that student. That's the intent of the DASA. Reporting discrimination or harassment, this is kind of like the hotline situation for child abuse that is mandated that we are obligated when we know there's a suspected child abuse situation to report it. It's the same philosophy. If you have reasonable cause to suspect that there's harassment going on from a teacher standpoint or a student standpoint, they are obligated to report that, and then in good faith, it's like the Good Samaritan law. If you help out a person in good conscience, then there should not be any proceedings that come back that make it that you have civil liability as a result of stepping in and making those reports. These are things that the law says that, according to the Dignity for All Students Act, all school districts must do. Develop policies intended to create a school environment that is free from discrimination and harassment. We've had the Code of Conduct. We have updated it. We've made sure that our Dignity Against All Students Act is included in it. But a lot of the things, like the cyberbullying rule actually the law goes into effect next July. We had already put it in because that's part of what we do here. Include in the school district's code of conduct an age-appropriate version of the policy written in plain language. Develop guidelines for a training program, guidelines designed to raise awareness and sensitivity, enable employees to prevent and respond to discrimination and harassment, and support the development of non-discriminatory instructional and counseling methods. And then at least one person on each school staff must be trained to handle human relations. Actually, when we went to our DASA coordinator training last week, every building should. And since we're a K-6 and a 7-12, we should have two, one for each level. And we do, because the elementary principal had not been hired yet, Sherry White stepped in and I went to the coordinator training. So we have two people that will act as the people responsible for receiving reports, making sure they're followed through on, and that nothing is left to be.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Could you please, whispering, and it's just really distracting. We're trying to have a meeting. Could you do that afterwards, please?
I apologize, I was seeking clarification on something on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the data. So we are the two people that kids can report to. They can report to anyone, but it needs to funnel to us, and we need to we're the ones responsible for making sure we follow through and resolving any complaints that are given to us. Other changes that are in the Code of Conduct since, like last year, we did change the volunteer and chaperone procedures. There is an application for volunteers. We did update some wording on that, and it's been approved by the board, and that's in the Code of Conduct. Same thing with chaperones. A person must be a volunteer first, and then if they have been cleared for volunteer, chaperone basically indicates more of the overnight type trips, not going on a single day field trip is not really what we consider in the chaperone area. That's a volunteer. We also put in the entire Part 201 information, and that's procedural safeguards for students that have disabilities in regards to discipline. We felt when Sharon and I actually looked at it and wanted to work on, that it was too massive to really cut it down and do justice, so we pretty much just put it in there. Technology guidelines, technology use, K2, 3 to 12 has been updated as the technology committee has come forth with those things. We did put in the bullying curriculum to where it is, where it's being taught, and at this point, in K to 6, they do the old VAS bullying prevention program. In 7th grade, we have a seminar class. In health class in 8th grade, they touch on relationships and getting along and how we treat each other. And we've actually also said within physical education class is a perfect place to incorporate character education curriculum into the PE curriculum. So those are where we're hitting, covering the topic of harassment. And the last thing, they were very specific on the definitions of vocabulary that's used in the code of conduct, transgender, sexual orientation, all those kind of things. So I took word for word the policy suggestions from Erie 1 and put those into the code of conduct. So that's the changes that have been done. The things we need to still have in place before our students come back, the code of conduct was copied today. For a summary was made that every family will get a summary of the code of conduct. We will also post the code of conduct onto the website. Any person that would like to request the full written copy of it will be able to contact the school and get that. We have the code written in a language that I believe 7th graders to 12th graders pretty much can understand. We still do need to write the code in more of an elementary fashion, so that it's, it's the difference between a high school student handbook and an elementary student handbook. We need to do that still. We're going to be reestablishing reporting guidance for the staff. Is every time that a student calls another student a name, is that a material incident that needs to be reported and go to the high extent or not? And that's where we have to define when it becomes harassment versus nothing is insignificant, but we're a place where teachers are teaching kids how to change their behavior. And I would expect that the teacher's going to work within their classroom to change the behavior of a student who might be picking on another before it truly becomes an office referral. I would assume, though, that once it becomes an office referral, it will become a mandated, reportable DASA offense. And that is the direction that the state is moving. We do a VADER report, which is violent actions that are reported. DASA is going to be the same sort of situation, but they have not yet made the report, but it's coming. Putting forms to be completed by students, parents, or community members on the website in regard to reporting harassment situations, things that have gone on. The new rule with the cyberbullying that goes into effect next July 1st actually says that if there's a situation off school grounds over the weekend where we should have had reasonable knowledge to know it was going to happen, we need to act on it, and that's where people reporting these situations to us is going to be pretty important for us to follow up on them. Okay? Any questions?
We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kathy Whitmarsh?
I have a couple of things that I thought I'd just pass out. You can just look at them for your own information, and I'll touch on them. There's two different items in here in this packet. The first thing is the new regulations that are coming out for food service. And sort of like Michelle, where the law is that it has to start September 1st, but not all the regulations were done until July. So a couple of significant things that I wanted to point out, and these are things that parents, I think, are going to be upset about, so we need to make them aware of them. first of all, there's a part to the law that says if we're not paying enough for the paid lunch, we have to increase those prices, which we did. We followed their guidelines because you plug it into the government software. This is federal regulation. Plug it in the software and it tells you whether or not you have to raise the lunch prices a nickel or a dime. And we did that, and that is, the next step is the food regulation side of it. And this is the type of thing you end up with. This is the menu for 1 week for pre-K through 5. It has to be done again in 6 through 8 and again in 9 through 12. And they all have to come out green, which I've made it this far. However, I haven't done the nutritional part of it or how many kids are taking each of those items. I can't do that part until September. So it is labor intense. It takes a long time to put each of these in and have them match up. And the basic guidelines that have to be are these, and one that I pointed out, the grains, that's going to be significant to parents, I think, is that I have to offer a bread, one bread every day, with a total over a 5-day period of 8 breads. But for pre-K through 5, it cannot be more than 9 breads. So no longer can they have a peanut butter sandwich every day for 5 days in a row or a ham sandwich. They cannot have 10 breads in a 5-day period. So one of those days is going to have a half a bread, a half a sandwich, or something. These are federal guidelines, and at the same time that they're mandating that we raise prices, they're also mandating these things. We put in a salad bar last year, a veggie bar, and we had protein on that. That can no longer be on it because they're not allowed to have over 2 proteins a day, 10 in a week. The high school part of it, as you can see at lunch, under the meats and meat alternatives can be up to 12. But the pre-K through 5 can only be 10. So if they took a meat off that salad bar that was more than the 2 ounces, 5 days a week, they're going to be over. So we had to take all the proteins off the salad bar, so it's just veggies. They don't care about veggies. We can give those and we can give fresh fruit, but we can't give the breads and the proteins. And if you've got a 3-ounce chicken patty that's 3 ounces of meat, then you've got to find someplace else to cut so that you're not going over 10 in a week. So as you can see, they've locked us into some pretty tight guidelines, and it's law. It's not just suggestion at this point. Now it's law. And starting next year, if you haven't plugged in all of these things, got them green, and qualified for this 6 cents a meal rule, then you can be the first to be investigated, and if they don't think you're doing enough, you'll lose reimbursement until you are getting in compliance with these mandates. So that's what the first section on this packet is. The second one, I just came up a little bit. I know that it's been discussed that labor, we have too much, possibly too much labor. So I came up with the way I was trained to come up with meals per labor hour. And I gave a few of those state ed guidelines that show you how to come up with those. Basically, this was in the days of what they're saying for like 300 and 400 is that we should be between 14 and 16 labor hours for that many meals, and we're about 12. However, this is in the days when they expected that you don't get all these extra choices. And they're trying to bring us back to that, so we may actually get in there. Also, there was no fresh fruit, so you didn't have all that washing and preparing, and there was no fresh vegetables. It was just canned, you just dish them up. So 12 labor hours is probably pretty close with the fruits and vegetables and wraps that we have been doing to what the guidelines by, it's state, but it's also federal, these guidelines that they set to give you an idea of what ballpark you should be in with your labor. So I figured out with lunch and the breakfast, which is 3 meals sold equals 1. I didn't add in the a la carte sales, which you need to do to refine that. We may be actually right on the money if those a la carte sales were also added in to the reimbursable meal and the reimbursable breakfast. So I want to open it up. I don't want to take all the time. I want to open it up and let you ask me some questions if you have some. I don't know if there's,
It's a lot of information.
it is.
I almost.
That's why I wanted to print it up so that you would be able to have it after.
Kathy, do you see any places in the kitchen areas that can keep the advisory board and where we can save money? We are putting a lot of money into that, that's coming out of the fund balance. Any suggestions on where we can cut down?
I need to let you know that when I took this over in 2004, they had put the $20,000 in reimbursement, and they were $60,000 in the hole. Since then, I've kept it pretty close, but I wasn't taking my health insurance. Now, what would have once been my goals, I really don't know my budget, and I don't know for sure what's being taken out, but hope is in our kitchen, so if the health insurance for their family is coming out of my budget, those are extra health insurances that one of them was in there before. And Linda's may have been in here there this year, I don't know. It wasn't with Rockies. Oh, I'm sorry. The 6 hour that was a split position. And I'm not professional, so I need those cues, and I'm sorry.
I understand your expenses, but I was wondering about where you recommend that we can save money as far as cost goes.
And I don't know for sure. I know that this may help us because we were giving extra food because at one time the board directed us to just feed the kids. So they could have 2 meals. They could, like I said, that protein on the salad bar plus protein. Now this is going to cut that out. And the vegetables and the fruits we were doing last year already. They won't increase the price other than the cost possibly if there is. But we were already spending that. Kids being able to take 4 breads, which was always a rule and the government wanted them to be able to take grains, has now changed with this new law. So that it may actually help us by cutting in those avenues. Having soup is an extra that won't fit anywhere unless that soup is actually like tomato soup with a sandwich and it's going to be part of the vegetable offering. But as far as chicken noodle, it doesn't fit in there. The protein's going to go over and the breads are going to go over. So it will never fit unless you're taking out proteins and bread. So those kind of things, the government is.
Do you see a change? Do you see moving manpower around in the kitchen to put us in compliance with this program?
I think the manpower is already, it will already fit. We were already doing most of these things. So they were. We did change one when that split 3.5 hour was gone. We moved a 3 hour up a half hour so that that person is actually getting off earlier than before. And there is, with the 7 hour positions, sometimes if it ended at 1:30 to 2, which used to be necessary when we had more people, now isn't. Because there are once in a while times when there's a necessary, it goes up to 2, but most of the time, those positions are just trying to find stuff to do, because by then you're done with your day. You know, it would be more important half hour earlier than later, but that is an area that can be extra right there, but we are paying that as salary, so I don't know that that could be fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have anything else?
Kathy, did you want to touch on selling of snacks?
Oh, yes, that was something that was taken out in 2000. At one time, that helps fund the cafeteria. But at one time, they felt they didn't want to be funded by snacks, so they were giving that $20,000 as part of that. That's part of the history of the cafeteria before I came. And it is possible that if we sell snacks, that can, because a la carte sales is something that can raise money and is not part of the new guidelines this year. In 2 years, that may change, but this year that, and next year, I believe, that is not. So right now, I know schools our size are making about $60,000 in extra sales as part of their, that goes, contributes to their program.
Did you tell me what kind of snacks you're talking about?
I'm talking about, they sell everything. The ones that are making that kind of money are doing Little Debbie's and ice cream and slushies and Gatorade and ice cream and all that. So it is not going to help in trying to cut back on childhood obesity if we do it.
That sounds.
Which is one of the reasons that, you know, the board has steered away from that. But we have to look at the financial side and how we're going to be able to fund ourselves. Because definitely salaries that we have, along with the children that we've lost, and the funding of the government that hasn't kept up with food costs, all contribute to this. I think we might be able to, if we did it now, sell the fryer, which I haven't used in years and doesn't fit in compliance, and I think in a couple of years is going to become illegal to even use in schools. So that's a possibility of getting a little bit, but we're talking about 5,000 maybe at the most. And if you can find someone that will buy it, because probably schools, at one time schools would have bought it. I had a couple that were asking, but I don't know that you can do that. Another thing is our people that have charges, and I've tried to mandate that $7.55. I need to know that you want to stick to that, definitely stick to it, and they get just peanut butter and milk, or what level you want us to not, that I need clarity on, because my girls need to know when they can say, no, we need to just give you peanut butter and milk, or when, you know, that's something that I want everybody to do the same thing. I don't want to have somebody giving extra charges and somebody else not.
Can you tell us what the, I'm sorry, I forgot, can you tell us what the limit is for the breads again?
Yes, they're under the grains on that paper, and for the pre-K through 5, 9 breads a week. Hamburger roll is 2 breads, for instance. So sub roll is 3. So subs 5 days a week no longer fit in anybody's category, unless you can get a 2-ounce sub roll or 2-grain sub roll. So, which is basically 50 grams.
So for the student that's charging, we're giving them peanut butter,
See,
so
that's
that they
going
have
to be,
something,
yeah,
then
that's,
that limit would be 4 times a week?
yeah, so you couldn't, so you'd have to do, that's something we're gonna have to revise. Thank you for bringing that up, because
Right.
depending, you have to give a total of 8 breads, so, but they can't be over. So one of those days, it's gonna have to be a half a sandwich if you gave sandwich. Yeah, that's something that I hadn't thought that would either.
I just can't see why half a sandwich, does the city would come in here and say you can't give them a full sandwich?
Yes, they are, and they've told us right now, this is federal government, they have their job, and the government wants to cut costs, just like you do. And if they can find schools that are not in compliance, they're gonna take away the reimbursement, and they're gonna save money. So they are being really strict with the state has told us anyway. I have to take them as meaning it, because they really sounded like they meant it. And there's schools that have asked, can we just get out of school lunch, forget the reimbursement? Forget the 6 cents, is what they're saying, that extra 6 cents. And they have been told that you cannot forget the 6 cents unless you're getting out of reimbursement completely. And everybody knows reimbursement is 75% of this budget or more. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket what the board is putting in compared to what the government was putting in. So, they're really serious about this, and the ones that haven't at least tried to comply with this will be on the top of the list to be investigated and find out exactly how far they are on it. So,
I think this is just gonna push more kids to regular lunches.
so do I. But there again, the government's happy because they don't have to pay the reimbursement. I think they're forcing, that's part of their motive, but I don't know that. I'm not officially saying that, but I really do think that that has something to do with it.
Is there any other questions for Kathy? All right, thanks a lot, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for
I
all your work
appreciate
and
your support,
information.
thank you, and if I can think of anything, I definitely will let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, could I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment of a particular person?
So,
Rick? Second, Reggie, sorry. Okay, we're in executive session at 7:00.